Hello, and welcome to Callus Prep. Today, we're going to be talking about citation questions. And citation questions are often paired with another question, and that'll usually be a summary or an inference question, and they ask you to provide support for the previous question. Sometimes, however, they will be standalone questions and they will give you some conclusion, either a summary or an inference, based on the information in the passage, and they give it to you right in the question, and then you have to provide support for the conclusion that they've drawn. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the first passage here, and I'd like you to pause the video, take a minute to read through the passage, take a look at the question, see if you can answer it on your own, and then when you're ready, start the video back up and we'll talk about that question and how to approach citation questions in general on the SAT. Okay, so as I mentioned, these questions are often paired with another question. However, in this case, we have a standalone citation question, but the approach is pretty much the same. We're going to take a look at the conclusion that has been drawn, and we're going to try and find some support from the information in the text. And in this case, they've given us the conclusion that Roman citizens disliked foreign trade. And we need to find somewhere in the passage that the author has supported this idea. And before we look at the answer choices, I actually like to try and find somewhere in the passage on my own, I try and find support for that conclusion. And the reason is it just helps you to, when you come across the answer choice, it makes you a little bit more confident that you've come up with this on your own, and now the test makers are confirming your idea as the correct answer. So that's always helpful. So for a lot of SAT questions, I will come up with my own answer before I take a look at the answer choices. And in this case, I like the last paragraph of this passage where they talk about the labor and risk of the voyage. And then they also discuss that a few individuals were enriched at the expense of the public. And I think that provides plenty of support for the idea that the citizens probably disliked foreign trade. Again, this could be an inference or a summary. It's leaning a little bit more towards an inference based on the support that I had, but that's absolutely fine as well. So I'm going to keep that last paragraph in the back of my mind, and as we go through the answer choices, we're going to, of course, see if any of them provides better support than my answer choice. Okay, so A is the first two lines of the passage, and it actually just tells us about the goods that Romans liked. It tells us that they are ransacking other countries in order to acquire these things that they want. But it doesn't really tell us anything about these citizens and whether or not they disliked foreign trade or why. So it doesn't really answer, or it doesn't really support that conclusion, so we can eliminate that. B is going to tell us about some of the other items that the Romans liked, and it's also telling us where they were acquired. There is one mention here of the most unpopular branch of foreign trade, so it could be an okay answer choice. I don't think it's strong enough support to say that Romans disliked foreign trade just based on the information in B, but I will keep it in the back of my mind in case there's nothing better. You know, if the last paragraph, my answer, my support isn't an answer choice, B could be an okay fallback. All right, C is actually just telling us again about where the trade is taking place. It's telling us about the specific location where the merchants held market. So that actually also is not a good answer choice. It doesn't support the idea that the citizens disliked foreign trade. So we can easily eliminate that, which leaves us with D. And D is actually the last paragraph. So that's perfect. I already said this provides support. The test maker has basically confirmed my answer. And now I can much more easily eliminate B because it wasn't very strong. It wasn't a very strong piece of evidence, but D really is. However, sometimes the test makers don't agree with you, or sometimes there are instances where there are actually two or more really good sentences from the passage that support a specific conclusion. So you won't always pick the right answer just by finding the support on your own, but it does help out a lot of the time, and probably more than half the time you will be hitting the right answer just by looking for the support on your own. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next passage here. And we've actually covered this question before in the summary lecture. So if you need help with this specific question, please take a look at that video. However, this is, as I said, the citation questions are often paired. So I'm including this as the first part of the question, and then obviously the next question is going to ask us to support that conclusion. So for that reason, I still do want you to pause the video, take a minute to refamiliarize yourself with the passage, see if you can find somewhere in the text where the answer to this question B is supported by the passage. And then when you're ready, start the video back up and we'll discuss how to find that support and how to answer citation questions. Okay, so as I said with the previous question, we're going to try and find support for this on our own. And since we've discussed this already, I am assuming everyone can come to the right answer for question 2. Now, we want to find support for this. So I'm going to take a look right there at the second paragraph, at the start of the second paragraph, where it says that modern tetrapods have evolved their own ways of swimming. And that is pretty much a paraphrase or a summary of answer choice B. So that looks like a really good spot to find evidence for choice B. Now, of course, we don't necessarily know that this will be provided as an answer choice, so I'm just doing this to find the support on my own. We still do have to take a look at the actual answer choices that they've given us, just to make sure that that they've included my selection as an answer choice, and 2, that there's nothing better than what I've chosen. All right, so let's take a look at A. And A is actually just going to tell us about plesiosaurs. It's going to basically introduce the passage, give us a little bit of background information about them, but it's not really going to tell us anything about tetrapods or swimming, so it does not provide support for that previous question. Let's take a look at B, and B is going to tell us that no living animals are similar. No living animals have a similar body plan to the plesiosaur. And again, this doesn't tell us too much about modern tetrapods and their methods of swimming, so I'm going to eliminate B as well because it doesn't really provide support for that previous question. Now C is actually the selection that I had mentioned at the start of this question, and it, in my mind, it provides very clear support for the idea that tetrapods developed diverse methods of swimming. In fact, I believe it is simply a paraphrasing of the information provided in the passage. So for that reason, I'm very confident in selecting C as the correct choice. And we're just going to look at D to make sure it's wrong. I mean, I'm already very confident. It's really hard to find a better piece of support. And also, the test makers usually will not include two really good pieces of evidence within one citation question, just because it's too hard to say that one's better than another. There usually has to be one that's clearly really good, and then if there's one that's kind of okay, that's not going to be the right answer. But there's never going to be two answer choices that are both really good. So in that case, we already know C is the right answer, but we do like to look at D and just confirm that it's the wrong answer. And in this case, D is telling us a little bit about a study that has been done to compare the possible swimming stroke of a plesiosaur to the swimming strokes of living animals. But again, it's not telling us too much about tetrapods and their methods of swimming being diverse. So, yes, we can, of course, confirm that D is the wrong answer. And I've already marked C on my answer sheet at this point, but I do like to confirm that D is wrong. All right, let's take a look at the next passage here. And again, we've discussed this question on the inference lecture. So if you need help with that, please do watch the inferences video, because that will cover how to answer this question. I would, however, like you to pause the video now, refamiliarize yourself with this passage, and then see if you can find some excerpt from the passage where the answer to question 4, which is A, is supported by some piece of the text. So just try and find somewhere in the passage to support answer choice A, and then when you're ready, start the video back up and we'll talk about how to find that support. All right, so A tells us that renting an office in a skyscraper is expensive. And as I had mentioned with the previous questions, I always like to find support on my own before I look at the answer choices. And in this case, I found right here in about line 7, he talks about the cost of rent for the skyscraper. And in line 8, he tells you that it's $36,000 a year. So that, to me, looks like a pretty good selection to support the answer to question 4. Of course, I'm going to look at each of the answer choices. You never know if the test makers found another selection and then excluded mine, or if, maybe they did choose mine, which would be awesome because that makes my life so much easier. But we always do have to analyze the answer choices before selecting or marking our answer sheet. Okay, let's take a look at A. And A is going to tell you about the office. He's comparing the office in the skyscraper that he visited to European business offices. And he basically just is making a comparison there, but it's not telling you anything about the cost of rent. He's not comparing the rent of the skyscraper to the rent of a European business office. So that doesn't really provide support for question 4, so we can eliminate A. B is going to tell us a little bit about his experience, what he can see from the skyscraper. He said he can see New York City and the Hudson below him, and then he can see the skies above him. So it's just kind of describing his experience in the skyscraper. But again, it doesn't tell us anything about the rent or the cost of that skyscraper. So that's not really a good choice to support the answer to question 4. So we'll eliminate that as well. All right, C tells us a little bit more about his experience in the skyscraper. This time it's telling us what he can hear. He's saying that he can hear the wind whistling by, and he's likening the experience to being at sea. And again, this is not really providing support. There's no mention of the cost of rent, so we can eliminate that as well. Which leaves us with D. And D actually is lines 7 and 8, which I had mentioned at the beginning of this question looked like a good selection to support the answer to the previous question. So now that we've eliminated A, B, and C, D is actually the support that I found on my own, so we can confidently mark that as the correct answer. And again, when you approach these questions, I like to find that support on my own before looking at the answer choices, because it makes it that much easier when you find the right answer. And also, you have to remember, these are paired questions, so oftentimes you have already answered question 4, for example. By answering question 4, you're reading through the passage and finding the area of the text where that's supported. Especially with those inference and summary questions, you're usually referencing the text to confirm your answer. Well, if you're already doing that, you should know where the support is in the passage, and that way, when you come across the citation question, you just say, oh yeah, it's right there. I was just reading that, it's line 7 and 8. And then you can go through your answer choices and go, okay, these are all wrong, and oh yeah, 7 and 8, that's it. It just makes it that much easier. And one more piece of advice for citation questions is, if you're having trouble with these questions, try and work on your inference and summary questions. If you get better with inferences and summaries, you're going to get those questions right more often, and that's going to help you. Like I said, if you're already getting the right answer to those questions, you should have a good idea of where to look in the text, so you should be getting citation questions right as well. All right, that about does it for today's lecture, and we'll see you next time.